He started off as an outcast.
When I was hired as a planner, no one else was called that. Back then, it wasn't easy for me to fit into a group. People sort of accused and attacked me as being this guy that didn't have any technological skills.
Whose ideas were far ahead of their time.
I would think that a video game idea like that, where you don't kill anybody, that was probably a tough sell for Hideo Kojima.
I know a lot of people complain that there was too much dialogue in the game, or the dialogue was, a little bit cheesy.
It was just getting very frustrating and tough for me. I began thinking about leaving the company.
But Hideo Kojima's ideas will create one of the greatest gaming series of all time.
The whole industry is still reeling from the impact that Metal Gear Solid has done for the video game industry.
He is an icon, there's no question.
What comes from this point onwards is just going to be amazing.
This is the story of Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid franchise. It's the turbulent 60s when a man named Hideo Kojima is born.
I was born in Tokyo in 1963 and lived there up until I was 3. And then I moved to Western Japan, and that's where I grew up.
He is introduced to the silver screen early in life.
When I was a baby boy, I was forced by my parents to watch films even before I knew who I was. So I grew up on movies.
While Kojima is studying economics in college, he discovers a new love.
I had a lot of free time, and that's when I started playing video games. Namely, games on the Famicom. The game that changed my life, the game of my destiny, was Shigeru Miyamoto's Super Mario Bros. Till then, I pretty much had the notion that film and video games were separate entities. But then, I realized that even in video games, I could do creative things just like they're done in the movies.
He has such a great mind for storytelling that I just think that his mind's always going, and he's always taking everything in and analyzing it and thinking of ways he can use that in a story.
Kojima decides to pursue a career in the game industry, much to the surprise of his friends.
I was part of an economics seminar during my 4th year in college when I told my professor and colleagues that I was going to join the video game industry. They told me, "No way, stop and think twice about what you're doing." I joined Konami in 1986.
But the aspiring game designer has some problems fitting in at first.
Everyone sort of did everything back then, and when I was hired as a planner, no one else was called that. Back then, it wasn't easy for me to fit into a group. People sort of accused and attacked me as being this guy that didn't have any technological skills.
His first project is a near disaster.
I was given this particular game plan, and I worked on it for 6 months. But the thing was, I didn't know anything about memory space in a game or the actual method of how to assemble a game and put together a game. I never thought about the actual schedule or timeline of when to do what. Then my boss called me and said, sorry, they were dropping my game plan, and this was my first big challenge. I was the only one in the company who had never had any of his games released. And people, instead of saying hi, would come and say, at least complete one game before you die.
Kojima is given one more chance.
After the game was dropped, the company came to me and told me to create a combat game based on war. If I were to work on a game based on war, I wanted to do something more like The Great Escape, where you actually run away instead of shoot. When I came up with this game plan, my superiors in the company said, this rookie's already failed on one project, and now he's trying to come up with this weird concept where you don't fight, but you run away.
I would think that trying to sell a video game idea like that, where you don't kill anybody and you are, in stealth mode the whole time, I think that was probably a tough sell for Hideo Kojima at first.
Near the end of the year, it was just getting very frustrating and tough for me. I began thinking about leaving the company, and I talked to one of my superiors. He helped me and gave me some advice, and eventually it all worked out in the end, I guess, with Metal Gear.
Kojima comes up with the idea of a stealth action game where players take the role of Solid Snake, a special forces operative who must defeat a walking nuclear tank called Metal Gear.
After 2 or 3 months of development, the game started moving. The game system was ready, and you could actually sneak around your character. And if the enemy saw you, you'd get the exclamation point above your head, and they'd start attacking you. When we got to this point, the team members played it and they said, "Oh my god, this could be a great game." And from then on, development went really smooth.
Konami begins to warm up to Kojima's unique new game. But how will the public react? After a long, hard road, Kojima releases his first game in 1987, Metal Gear.
The game was for the MSX system. It wasn't a big market, but when the game came out, it was really well received, and was ranked like number 1 or 2 among all consumer software games in the adventure or RPG categories.
In 1988, Metal Gear makes its way to the US on the NES.
Metal Gear was very different from all of the games that were popular on the Famicom at that time because it was not a run-and-gun, all-out action game.
Since the MSX game of Metal Gear was very well received, Konami decided to port the game to the NES, and they got a completely different team to create the NES version of the game. It probably sold over 1 million copies in the US.
It's no surprise that Konami asks for a sequel.
And since the NES version of Metal Gear sold so well in the US, the sales force in the US said, please, do a sequel. They started working on a sequel, and that was Snake's Revenge. First of all, I did not work on either version of the 2 NES games at all.
So what they ended up producing was a game that was completely different. It was called Metal Gear 2 Snake's Revenge. The problem, of course, with this is that people who liked Metal Gear would play this and say, what the heck is this? This isn't Metal Gear. This is just an action game. So that was kind of disappointing. Snake's Revenge is not part of the official Metal Gear timeline.
This guy I met on the train from the company said, Kojima-san, I worked on Snake's Revenge, and I'm personally a big fan of your original game. I'd like to see a sequel to Metal Gear done by the real creator, Mr. Kojima. When he said that to me, the idea got into my head and I started thinking about a real sequel to the game. By the time I got off the train and went home, the entire storyline was fixed in my mind. So I went to my boss at Konami the next day with a game plan, and he said, yes, let's give it a go.
The only Metal Gear game that was not released in the United States yet was Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, and this only appeared on the MSX system.
Metal Gear 2 was released in 1990. After that, I started working on Police Knots. That's when I started hearing rumors about the PlayStation.
In 1995, Sony gives birth to the 32-bit era by introducing the PlayStation. The powerful new system catches Kojima's eye.
When I saw how advanced these new systems coming out were, I started thinking about a new action game.
Kojima decides to revisit the Metal Gear franchise.
We established this company called Konami Computer Entertainment Japan in 1996 in Tokyo in order to develop Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation. The PlayStation allowed me to do more things that I wanted to do for the whole infiltration experience. Since what I wanted to do was in 3D, I used these polygons to create a 3D environment.
To ensure Metal Gear Solid has a unique look, Kojima brings aboard a rookie designer named Yoji Shinkawa to create an unforgettable cast of characters.
Mr. Kojima interviewed me and said, I'm now working on the Metal Gear project. Would you like to come and work for me? I said, why not? Sure. So Metal Gear Solid happened to be the first game I worked on.
When we talk about the Metal Gear series, you also have to talk about Yoji Shinkawa. He really created the atmosphere of the world and the really memorable characters.
There's so many characters. Meryl was a really interesting character. It was really neat to see Kojima put that feminine element into the game, and I thought that it was a really great way to tell a love story while you're playing through all this action.
This is no time to try and hit on me, Snake.
Sniper Wolf was a great character as well. He gives all his characters a heart and a purpose, and you understand why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Catch you later, Ansel.
And the profound, twisted nature of the characters. They have problems, and some of them have sexual problems.
This is the greatest handgun ever made.
And some of them are absolutely nuts.
I am losing myself.
Solid Snake gets a new look as well.
I tried to make Solid Snake as colorless as possible. If he has too many of his own characteristics, then the player won't be able to associate himself or herself to the character.
I actually did not think about color at all. I basically just wanted to recreate Solid Snake from the MSX series in my own way. I wanted to digest him, and then spit out this new Solid Snake.
Kojima is now ready to update the stealth action gameplay Metal Gear is known for. Little does he know that what he does will revolutionize gaming. By 1996, the PlayStation has ushered in a new era of 3D gaming. Kojima